Okay. I'm ready. Thank you for your patience.
So welcome
Take
to If
two.
These Heels Could Talk, everybody. I'm Michelle with Bad Cat Digital.
And I'm JoyGenea with Solutions by JoyGenea.
And today we are talking about freezing up and kind of what happens to your cognitive processes when your emotional processes are overwhelmed.
So I was book club book this month was actually a Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah item, and it was called What Happened to You. And it was really interesting. And so Dr. Bruce Perry is a specialist in trauma. I didn't even realize this when I threw it on the list.
He's a specialist in trauma.
He's
works
a specialist
with children.
in trauma. Really interesting. He can tell a story.
And I haven't read this book, but I've read one of his other books called The Boy Who Was Raised
as a dog.
The boy who's raised as a dog. And he works closely with children in trauma, including the kids who came out of, the compound at Waco and some really, really big, heavy stuff. And so there's a beautiful graph in the middle, or chart in the middle of this book that JoyGenea sent me a picture of. And I've been thinking about it ever since, because when we are calm and alert, our cognitive processes are higher, but I did know that, but I had no concept of how much higher they are. And if you've ever tried to make a decision while you're under emotional stress or duress,
it's ugly. It's
ugly.
Yes.
It's ugly. And so if you're making decisions as a boss or as a leader, and you're not understanding this, then you could be making decisions emotionally rather than making them intellectually, or you could be creating or fostering, unknowingly, an environment where your employees are making decisions or being forced into circumstances where they're making decisions less than optimally because those circumstances are flooding them emotionally.
I'll add to that, or things are going on within their lives that have triggered them into these spaces. They've come to work and you're now staring at the frozen employee.
Because as we say, we all bring all of ourselves to work with us. So whatever happened that morning with your employee and their kid who, threw a temper tantrum and couldn't get them to work. I mean, I'm having some challenges at home, and that impacts my work day. It impacts how I feel about work. It impacts my decision making. It impacts how passionate and excited I am about being at work, because my brain is divided. It's feeling like it's divided.
Well, and those things aren't scheduled.
Right.
Like the key thing is nobody.
Right. Not so much.
I have a family member who's alienated from her grandchild, and periodically, like, that birthday comes around, and then periodically, unfortunately, like, harmful messaging gets sent as aggressive. She doesn't, like, it's not on her schedule. Oh, today I'll be receiving the angry text from someone. It just randomly arrives.
Just randomly shows up.
Right. And now all of a sudden she's moved from a state of calm to alert or alarm or fear or terror. Like, she's moved somewhere in there. And all of us, our cognitive skill, our processing diminishes. And he's actually laid it out nicely.
He really has. It's kind of a really nice chart. So if we're thinking about freeze as kind of resistance, and we're thinking about flight as kind of defiance, this concept of, well, I'm not going to do it. You can't make me. You're not my dad. And then we think about the fight in kind of this terror sense. Now, all of a sudden, as we move from freeze to flight to fight, our cognitive processes actually decrease. And the functional IQ measurement that they talk about in the book, with the studies that they're talking about and all of the supporting documentation that you can look up online later, is to go from calm to terror, is to drop 40 IQ points. 40. That's losing, for the vast majority of people, that's losing a third of their IQ.
Right.
In an instant.
Yep. Gone. And now you're needing it. Yes. They had an example within the book, and they talked about the people, not to trigger anybody, but they talked about the people on the airplane from 9/11 that was diverted. That is a group of people that went from
calm.
You're not even quite in calm when you're on an airplane.
Well, that's true. So you're in alert.
You're alert.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they went to this, and they had the capacity, even at this diminished state, to be reflective, to make phone calls, and to overtake the cockpit and do what they did.
Wow.
And that is impressive. That's a group of people that can go to that level and still have some training
and still have
ability.
some, well, and that's exactly the thing when you say training, and recognize that I know we're not showing this chart to you. So we're talking about a series of,
well, they can't.
We talk about a series from calm to alert to alarm to fear to terror. So kind of a 5-step, a 5-stage, I guess you could say, series that takes you down from one extreme to the other, 40-ish cognitive functional IQ points.
Yeah.
And so what you just said, though, people with training. So training is about, in a lot of sense, is about muscle memory, and it's about knowing how to act when you don't know how to act. So those of us who don't have, say, emergency response training like JoyGenea has, it's very difficult for us to know what to do. It's very, I can't even hardly answer the question about what would happen if such and such happened in the building, because I haven't thought about it. And so I'm thinking about it literally for the first time. And if it's a scenario that is something that creates a lot of fear in me when I'm even just talking about it, then it's hard for me to abstract. It's hard for me to think. It's hard for me to be creative. It's hard for me to come up with a solution.
And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of a variety of circumstances that I'm not even going to name, but large incidents that have happened in the last few years or in the last couple of weeks, actually.
Right.
Where in retrospect, as people look back at how other people reacted, there's a lot of judgment and criticism. They weren't in terror. Right. And so for those people that were, they made the best decisions they could with almost half of their IQ.
Well, and that's exactly it. So, so one of my favorite lines is, from a movie, is from one of the Bourne movies. I don't even remember which one. And all of the, CIA guys are talking to each other. And one of them says, "You don't question decisions made during an op in real time. We don't afternoon quarterback or Monday morning quarterback what happened in real time during an operation because of this."
Yes.
Because you're literally doing the best that you can. And so when we, one of the things I think that's unfortunate, or an unfortunate byproduct of the amazing tool that we have at our disposal with the internet and some of the softwares that we have, like the social media softwares, is that it gives people the opportunity and the anonymity, or seemingly anonymity, or the distance of the screen makes people feel entitled or privileged enough, or righteous enough to be able to Monday morning quarterback. That's or second guess somebody's decisions. And you see it happen a lot with women in situations where I remember there was that alligator. Remember that alligator one where the alligator grabbed her kid at Disneyland or something?
Yes,
I don't remember. It's awful, awful situation. Yes. And people are second guessing or questioning the mom's actions on the video a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. And it's like, this is the worst moment of this person's life. And it happens so quickly. What would you have no idea what you would do. No idea what you would do.
You would have no idea.
But we can watch the video over and over and over again, make it from the safety and comfort of our homes, make some decisions about what we would do. And now it is likely that we'd make a better decision in the event that somebody around us was snatched by a crocodile or alligator or whatever. So alligator, I think, because it was in Florida. But so that's the point, though. That's the point that we're making, is that when we watch something happen and second guess it, we're not making decisions in real time. We're not making decisions in the emotional state that person is making decisions in. So when it looks like they've done something maybe not as smart, this research would indicate that that's probably true. Right. But it's not their normal level of cognition, and that's the point.
Right. And we come to work at times like that.
Absolutely.
And we have to you can't, just like I was saying, sometimes you get triggered and those aren't scheduled. Well, neither are a gob of the decisions I have to make every day related to my business.
Right.
And you just, and anybody that's studying this and learning about it, and sitting in ambiguity is the worst, most stressful and awful. Unconstructive. Like awful. It will completely deplete your energy, your focus, all of those things. So the longer you sit in ambiguity, I'm not making a decision, I've got to wait, I need lots more data. Like if it is not life-threatening, there's a point where you make a decision and then you pivot. And then you pivot, because sitting in that, it leaves you stuck in this terror section over here with half of your IQ.
And for
and you can't
those
make
who
decisions in that
have
place well.
a large team of employees, recognize that while you're making a decision, they're sitting in ambiguity.
Oh yeah,
So,
good point.
So not making a call is actually creating stress that doesn't necessarily, sometimes it needs to be created because sometimes you are waiting for information.
Right.
And sometimes but sometimes it's just I don't know, because
like this could go this way, that could go that way. I'm just not sure.
So the example that I share with my young leadership team that we're kind of training over time as they're leading, it's a, real-time training, because this is what happens with young small businesses that have a lot of young employees.
Well, and that's how it kind of works in life.
Yeah. You got to learn somehow.
Yeah.
Is I talk about the car is coming at you and you're standing in the middle of the street. Now you can go left or you can go right. But if you continue to stand there and debate whether left or right is the right way to go, you're going to get hit by the car.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is that either left or right is better than not making a decision at all, because not making a decision is making a decision. It's just doing it passively. So if you make a decision, you maybe rapidly look to the left, see what you see, rapidly look to the right, see what you see, and make the decision, and you go. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it turns out really well. And that was the side of the street you wanted to be on. And sometimes you've got to do a little bit more work and cross the street again. But life goes on, and making the decision means that you get to make a decision tomorrow. So sometimes that's the best that we can do, is make the best decision we can and then move forward. And that's the ambiguity is what creates the stress. The ambiguity, or the inability to make the decision, or the not knowing what's happening tomorrow, that's what's creating anxiety.
Immensely. And then with that anxiety is kind of the cake over this, because what's happening. So
anxiety glitter.
It's
the sprinkles.
It's the sprinkles, the bonus.
Yes.
So what's happening when you're in calm, it's all in your cortex. It's all up in here. You got lots of rational, like you're having your whole brain is having these conversations. It's great. When you're alert, again, it's in your cortex, but it's kind of starting to have a conversation with the limbic. Like it's going back to the back of your brain, and it's got a little front, like they're, he brings up the example. I thought this was great. When you see, because we see a lot of deer in Minnesota. Let's be clear. When you see a deer, they stop. They freeze. Their first response is, let's check out this. What do we need to do next?
Right.
Let's assess the situation. I heard something new. Where's it coming from? Let's assess the situation. So when you see them do that, think of that. Like they're just doing an assessment.
Right.
So that's you in alert. That's like, okay, I'm alert. Then there's alarm. It's like, okay, I've assessed the situation. The sound is coming from over there. And that is a large woof. Now we're in alarm. So now we're moving into the limbic. So you're moving down your brain back there. Now, once you go into fear, you're like, this is a big issue and we need to run. We've moved into fear. Now we've moved further down your brainstem. And again, as you do this, remember, this was a whole big part of your brain, lots of conversation. That's where we're high IQ points. When we move back down to the stem of your brain, this is where all it's doing is keeping you alive. That's its whole job. That's the first place you process all information. It comes through there and goes up to the big room. But it starts in the little entryway.
This is intuition. This is
what keeps you alive.
Yeah. This is the stuff that keeps you breathing literally.
Yeah.
As you're sleeping. This is your auto responses. This all is and your body just functioning without you.
But that's got it ain't talking to any of this. It's shut off that. And it's like, we need to run. We need to move now. Like we need to send blood to our legs.
We need to faint or go into shock or shut parts of our body down.
Yes.
One of the most interesting things that I read once is that when you are dying of hypothermia, your body starts getting so hot.
Yeah.
Like you start to feel super hot. And so a lot of times people who die, like say in a blizzard or something, they'll be found and they'll be naked because their body at the very end tricks them into thinking they're hot. So they take off all of their clothes.
Yeah. But that's all limbic. That's all.
But that's all all that collapse of those systems. Mm-hmm. And so what we're talking about in the extreme, of course, because we're talking about life-threatening scenarios, but remember, some scenarios can feel life-threatening to some people, whether they are or not from the outside,
Mm-hmm.
right? So asking somebody with, say, high anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
asking somebody to do something new that they don't understand might completely flood them
And move them all
the way over there without intention or understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing what is going on at home.
Mm-hmm.
We bring, like I said, we bring all of ourselves with us every day to work. And so not knowing what's happening, and there are lines, there are lines, there's things that we don't tell our coworkers. There's things that we don't share with everybody.
Well, and for some people in abuse, I'll use that as an example. If people have abuse going on at home, quite often work is the reprieve.
Right.
They don't want to come here and talk about it. They don't want to bring that home. They don't want to bring home here. They don't want to unpack it. That doesn't mean they didn't bring the stress and the anxiety of some of that there. And keeping that really in mind as something, as an employer, when you're looking at them and you see an employee kind of freeze.
Yeah.
Recognize the cognition has gone down.
Yep.
More is going on than what you're seeing. It is probably not the thing in front of you, but it's more is going on. And how can you help navigate them through that?
And there are things
if they're a keeper employee.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, like if they're always in freeze and you're always navigating them, this might not be a right job for them or a right fit. And you need to take that into consideration, because if you're only getting 60% of an employee because they're having freeze, it's time to reconsider.
Well, and that's when you talk about kind of reasonable accommodation, right? And then the idea of reasonable accommodation for say somebody with, I don't know, severe anxiety, or somebody with PTSD, or somebody with ADHD even, or ASD. So somebody with a neurodiversity, all of those kinds of different things. There are a lot of different tools and coaching and different things that can be accessed to help them, to help that individual adapt to a group workplace, because those are unfortunately the challenges that individual then has a challenge that needs other people to adjust to it. And other people have to adjust their behaviors, which is going to impact every individual that comes into a workplace. We all adjust to, there's always
an ecosystem.
I mean, it is an ecosystem.
It's an ecosystem.
Like we adjust to the guy who cooks fish in the microwave at work. Because, so everybody changes when they take their lunch, because that guy's going to cook fish in the microwave. So I'm not talking about, we make small adjustments all the time. So we're not talking about making this into something that it's like some big deal, or it's somebody's.
No, this is an important thing in life, which is community.
Right. And we all adjust to everybody in community.
That's an important thing.
And a new person coming into that community requires the community to adjust.
Yeah.
And there are some adjustments that we make without even thinking about them. There are some adjustments that we make and they don't feel that big to us. And then there are some adjustments that feel bigger. And so, we're asking this individual who's, creating a need for maybe some larger or some bigger behavioral changes in the rest of the team. We're asking that person to work. We also need to be asking the rest of our team to work on seeing those adjustments as positive things, seeing the positive contribution that person brings, and why those adjustments are important to help support and help them have the best experience where they are. So all of those kinds of things, that's the challenge of leadership. And it's a challenge of leadership no matter what. It's just sometimes it's more obvious than others. And that's a really, I think, an important distinction, because we don't want to create this idea that small businesses take on an undue burden by hiring people with ADHD. That's ridiculous.
No, they don't.
And hiring people with anxiety or PTSD, the thing is that these things, these experiences, these plans, they come with other gifts that are hard to get in people who don't have those experiences.
Not just that, they're finding statistically now the numbers are upwards of 40%.
Right.
And I'm not saying for neurodiversity, but I'm talking about including the anxieties and those types of things. It's increasing, and they're just fine. That's what it is. So this isn't even something you can avoid. If you have a workforce, you have diversity, you might just not be aware of it,
right,
and confused about it. So and this is one way. And I think it's a great thing to keep in mind, that if you're freezing, if you're seeing a loved one freeze, if you've got an employee that looks a little frozen, more than likely they are. And then if you start asking for them to do more in-depth decision making and so forth, you're not going to get the best of them until you help them. If you can.
What can you do to help them kind of come back to themselves? That's in our
that's in
another episode. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for listening to If These Heels Can Talk. I'm Michelle from Bad Cat Digital.
And I'm JoyGenea.